Hey everybody, No CMO Podcast. We're starting up kind of full cycle again now. Obviously we had been away for a few months, but we're kind of getting back at it, trying to get some content out there. Today, have a great guest, Carlos Escutia from Growrk, actually a client of ours. Very relevant company for the time. A lot of interesting questions around, kind of the future of work in general. Carlos, our audience mostly marketers, startup people in the tech world, entrepreneurs kind of hustling to get out there and work, kind of right in the target market for the product. Why don't you kind of give a little background first on yourself? We usually have people do a little intro, and then maybe we can, take it from there, get into the product.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation, Chris. Happy to talk here. So our background is it's a little bit I guess common nowadays, but I did start my career in finance. So I did work in investment banking for a few years out in New York, working for Wells Fargo Securities in the technology, media, and telecom group. I did that for a few years, and then I joined a venture fund in Mexico City to help support and develop the ecosystem of rapidly growing companies that had a social, impact angle as well as the economic one. So, it was an interesting experience. It kind of got me into the entrepreneurial mindset, helping founders figured out a way to launch their businesses and take them off the ground. So that's kind of how I got my feet in the in the entrepreneurial waters. And so I started thinking about ideas about what we could do next after that experience. And so I engaged in conversations with a couple of folks that I was close to out in India. And so they had an idea to launch a furniture rental business. And so in 2017, I moved to San Francisco to launch a company called Casa One. And so Casa One, we raised 1.5 million from Axel Partners as a seed round to get started. And that's a company that has been rapidly growing. To date, we have raised over $80 million. Just last week, we announced a $50 million debt facility from Credit Suisse. And so the company is it's in multiple markets in the U.S. and it's currently working on expanding to international markets. And I was the co-founder and head of operations, so my role really was to build everything from the ground up. And so with furniture rentals, really our focus here is on B2B. So we serve large co-working spaces, short-term hospitality companies, you name it. And this solution really started to take off 2017, 2018. That was right about the same time when this other company, our competitor, actually came into the space, Rent Feather or Live Feather now, a YC Combinator company. So those are, I would say, those two companies, Casa One and Feather, are kind of the largest ones in that space. Furniture rental per se is nothing new. Really, what we're providing, what we're developing, is a new way to handle that, and with a new, new products, new services that are kind of enabled with technology that improve the experience for the end user. So, that's my background. We because of that experience, while I was in San Francisco, I started noticing how many companies were being started with the remote first mindset. So the cost of living in San Francisco, the cost of hiring in San Francisco was just too high for many of these bootstrap companies that were trying to figure it out, how to get off the ground. And so the solution was, hey, you know what, I'm here because investors are here in the Bay Area, but, we should think about building our business remotely and hiring people from wherever we can, the right talent at the right price, right? And so I started seeing that more and more. And then I started thinking, well, it seems like there's an opportunity there. So we should start looking into building a solution for that space, for the remote workspace. So to me, based on the experience that I had developed at Casa, the first thing I thought about is like, hey, equipment. How are these guys getting equipment, right? To actually ensure that the remote worker has the tools that he or she needs to perform optimally remotely. So that was the first thing, and so I started working on this idea last year, and so I left Casa One in I would say mid June of last year, 2019, to
Okay.
start working on Growrk remote full time. So obviously, I'm still a shareholder at Casa, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations, and I went full time on this opportunity. So we launched in early January of this year, 2020, and it just happened to coincide with the COVID pandemic.
So you didn't have any kind of, fortune telling vision that 99% of people were going to be working from home
Not at all. Not at
in
all.
2 months.
No, it was not at all. It was just good timing. We, what we're building, we're looking at the next 5 years, 10 years, where we had already identified that trend where a lot of these companies would be going remote. And so that's how we started really doing this. As a matter of fact, when I launched, I was not thinking about raising funding for this because I already had experienced that, and I kind of wanted to bootstrap this and kind of I knew that there were things that had to be developed better, but I did get a sense of the large market opportunity. So that was the mindset. So what ended up happening is that we launched, and so because of my network in the Bay Area, I started talking to a few friends and really telling them about what we were doing here. And so we got a couple of notes from some media outlets, Crunchbase News, Business Insider, that covered us at that early stage. We had not even raised anything yet, like I mentioned. And so that's kind of what put us on the map early on, and it just coincided with this with the pandemic. So the initial companies that we're targeting were startups, technology companies that we knew were early adopters, and we're thinking about a better way to develop a remote work strategy. But in a matter of weeks, we started getting calls from well-established companies that were asking for a solution for hundreds, if not thousands. As a matter of fact, there's one media company that reached out to us in February asking us if we could supply them with 1,500 chairs. And so at that point, we didn't have the capacity, right, or the capability to do that. So that's when I changed my mind. I was like, all right, well, this has accelerated considerably. So I went ahead and I raised a small pre-seed round from a venture fund out in Los Angeles called Act One. And so I didn't run a fundraising process. Basically, I spoke with this guy, I told him about the vision, the product that we're building, and we immediately got a term sheet, and executed it and got the money in 2 weeks, right? And so what we have done since that is that we have been building. We hired the team, the developers that we need to actually build the software, the solution that will help us scale this our service globally. We are at that point right now where we're actually about to launch the first version of that next week. But in the last few months, we have been handling orders manually. So what that means is that we process everything for customers. Ourselves. And so what that means is our service really, and I haven't even talked about what we're doing here, but our service really what we do is a remote office management platform. A remote office management platform that enables companies to manage and control the remote work environment of the remote employees. So what does it mean exactly? So when you're operating in an office space, there's hundreds of hours, millions of dollars that go into ensuring that workspace is safe and comfortable for you, right? When you work from home, when you work remotely, all of this goes out the window. And so many of these companies, or actually most of the companies that have remote employees, the way they're solving this or the way they're going about this is like, hey, here's $500. Hey, here's $1,000 a stipend.
Right. They're just giving you,
right?
yeah.
And so they're delegating the responsibility to the employee to figure it out what it is that they need for themselves, right? And they're neglecting or ignoring a lot of problems that, can become pretty large and considerable down the road by ignoring those issues. And so the main ones are, if your employee does not have the right equipment, that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if the employee does not know how to use equipment, there's no way that employee is going to be operating safely from her or his workspace. And so
Can you elaborate on that? I think people might be confused. What constitutes proper use of equipment? We're talking about ergonomics, right?
Ergonomics training. So ergonomics training, that's what I mean exactly. So, whenever you work on your setup, whenever you get your desk, whenever you get your chair, you have to make sure that you understand how to use that equipment, how to position it, what are the best practices for you in terms of how long you need to be standing, how long you need to be sitting, how often do you need to keep moving, right? There are a lot of considerations that you normally don't have in a home office environment, as opposed to when you're in an office. For example, there's some time cues, right? If it's time for lunch, if you're in an office environment, you see your colleagues, standing up and, hey, I'm going to go grab lunch. You want to come or whatever, right? That's something that doesn't happen when you're working from home. And so, you have to be very thoughtful about this consideration, so that long-term it does not cause health problems for you, right? As a person, as an individual, which is an important thing. But as an employer, you want to make sure that your employees are healthy and that, they're not going to really, get injured and, claim workers' compensation and,
right.
insurance and all this, series of problems that can translate into higher, premiums that it can be considerable at some point for a company. So from a health standpoint, that just makes sense, right? Really, What we're doing here is what we're enabling with our service, our companies to do is, hey, you're actually taking care of your employees. You're already sending them a laptop or whatever it is that you're providing to work from home. Why don't you also provide the equipment that they actually need to create an optimal workspace? And so in our case, in the case of Growrk, we also wrap that up around, we provide every employee with ergonomics training already within our service. And not only once, but every few months, we have somebody checking in and making sure that, hey, do you have any back issues or any neck issues? Any problems that are particular to that individual can be addressed and can be documented within our platform, so that employees actually kind of have a window into the remote workers, home space, right? To ensure that place is optimal and is safe and is comfortable, and you're taking care of the employee. So that's what we're doing from a service standpoint. From a cost standpoint, the other problem that we solve is that this equipment, it's thousands of dollars, right? You can, if you want high quality equipment, a good quality ergonomic chair is going to be more than $1,000, right?
Sure.
So with the stipend, you're not even going to be able to afford that. With our solution, our subscription really enables to distribute the cost of high quality equipment over 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. So you can pay per employee, $150 or so. So it makes it very financially efficient without having to, spend so much up front. And so, it's a very manageable expense. You don't have to get into issues of, tax considerations whenever you provide a stipend to an employee that, may cause a tax liability to the employee, because our solution is really a service that you're hiring, similar to an utility. And so, our remote office management as a service, platform enables companies to do this. So that's how we are structuring our solution today. As we get more feedback from customers, as we continue onboarding more customers, our ultimate, goal is to incorporate all this feedback and to continue improving our products and our solutions so that whomever companies or employees decide to build a remote first organizations, they can easily onboard them on our platform, and we can service their home office needs consistently, and keep that quality kind of control over those environments, right? So that's the value proposition. That's what we're building. Again, this is something that regardless of what COVID has done in the last few months, sure, we know that this is the future of work, and we are building. We're building the solution that will help provide these services to remote employees anywhere in the globe.
I want to go back a little bit, and we're going to come back to the product because, a lot of us here have remote teams, and, these are issues that are, often considered, as you were describing before, neck and back issues. I was just noticing them myself. So there's definitely some, I want to pick your mind a little bit on that. But before we get to that, I want to go back and maybe delve into some more, kind of personal questions that might be, of use to people. Going from, banking in New York to, founding a startup, right? Big difference in terms of the work environment, in terms of just general, life. How did you kind of come about that change? Was it a gradual thing? How do you generally make that transition?
That's a great question. I think it's important to mention that I come from an entrepreneurial family myself. My father used to own a textile trading company based out of Mexico City, and with offices in San Francisco too. So I did work for him for a few years after college. My role really was to travel to China, find suppliers, vendors, and develop the supply chain to get those products into our customer stores in the U.S. and Mexico. So that was kind of my first exposure to entrepreneurship. When I moved to financial services, when I started working in banking, it really was more of a, hey, this is something that I find interesting. I'd like to learn more about, and
sure.
We'll see how that goes, right? But
wasn't the end goal.
Yeah, it wasn't really the end goal, and really what you realize, especially that earlier on in my career, is I know what makes me tick, right? And what makes me tick is creating new solutions, solving problems, and that really have an impact. I think that for banking, it's a very interesting space for those guys, those folks that are actually working in the industry. For me, it was very interesting the first year. It was very exciting the first year, and then the second year, third year, it was just turning more. Yeah, it was turning more into. I always say this, and I was a kid. They pay you a lot to push paper, really.
Sure.
So that's really how I felt, and when I compare myself to my friends who were building, stuff, that is where you could contrast what was happening and where I saw my career going to. So that was my thought process behind it. When I left banking, it was with intention of, hey, what's the best way to get into, to actually start a company effectively. And so I wanted to learn firsthand. And obviously I married kind of my financial background with sort of entrepreneurial experience working for my family business. And that's how I enter into venture capital in Mexico City, of all places, right?
Sure.
And so I did that for a couple of years, and before jumping full ahead into entrepreneurship, based on all the learnings of me helping entrepreneurs, founders, get their businesses off the ground in those markets.
Did you find that advising the other entrepreneurs gave you a lot of context, going later on to starting, the two companies you've recently been involved with?
No, for sure. It's
because I was gonna say, there's a lot of like kind of VC advisor type people that I know that was kind of, they were on the VC side and they went and started a company.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you do learn a lot. I think that, a lot of here's what happens a lot of times, right? Since we have been on both sides of the table. a lot of
Sure.
these VCs, hire people, MBAs, you name it, right? But really don't have entrepreneurial experience.
No.
And so, it's very easy for you just give advice and, oh yeah, you should do this, you should do that. But if you're not in the trenches, if you're not,
You
talking
don't
to
know
customers,
really.
you really don't know. And
Yeah.
so, you do try to help as much as possible, but the reality is that I ended up learning significantly more from, working with founders than, me providing any advice, right?
Sure.
And really, the best we could do is just, try to set them up to at least, try to provide some funding. But other than that, it's the only
Yeah.
way, and it's really the only way you learn, right? You can read as much as you want. You can talk to people as much as you want, but it is not until you're doing it and you're trying to get your first customers and you land your first customers and then you're trying to keep, happy those first customers that you really end up learning, how to operate and how to move things. And a lot of things, you know, everybody has a plan until you get, punched in the face, right? And so that happens every day in the startup world, right? And so, we, even with the experience that we have, we still continue to get that. And it's an ongoing process, and it's more of a mindset thing. You just have to be a problem solver. You have to be okay with ambiguity. You have to be okay with uncertainty, and,
Sure.
and just wake up every day, with the energy to, hey, I need to figure this out. I know that this is a problem. I know that this is not working yet. So what can I do? What can I do? And always asking that question, right? Yourself.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I have noticed with the VCs, they always bring on these MBA guys, that really don't know what they're talking about in terms of the startup beyond the money. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, and it's weird that they kind of point them as advisors and everything.
And actually, just to make a parenthesis here, the reason why
yeah,
I ended up working with that one for this fund is because both of the partners are former entrepreneurs themselves. And so I wanted to partner with people that actually understood what it takes
Yeah.
to get something off the ground. Because, what's the point of me, going to board meeting and, presenting, numbers or problems that really are not, if we are still trying to figure it out to find that product market fit, how are you going to be able to communicate that to somebody who's never actually tried to do something, right? And with these guys, they get it. They understand the problems. They understand what we need to prioritize, and so they provide assistance, as needed. And so they've been great partners so far.
Got it. My other question, which is, a lot of people, not that they jump from company to company, but you found a few companies, some work, some don't. Obviously, there's a little bit of trial and error to get to the end zone. How did, Casa One, kind of influence Growrk? Obviously, there's direct connections between the products in terms of the business model and that type of deal. Did it come out of it in a certain way?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question, because even though it might seem that there are some similarities to what Casa One does and what we're doing today, the reality is that our business model is it's completely different. And by this,
Right.
by the way, because I myself, since I was the one who built operations from zero at Casa One, I know how complex it is to build a business that has a physical component to it, right? It's not the same as when you're developing software, you just push it and you just market it and that sort of thing, as to when you actually have to be delivering sofas
More costs
to multiple, residencies all over the country, right? And so that creates a lot of complexity operationally, but also, from a management standpoint. So what do I mean exactly? So, whenever you're delivering products physically, you have to think about, getting the warehouse. You need to think about the trucks, building the systems, the processes to manage the employees who actually are going to be performing these deliveries on the ground. And so the amount of problems that come up every day is just endless, right? And it's part of that, it's part of that connection. We try to minimize that friction, developing software solutions that provide a better operational management on the ground, right? But
Sure.
but yeah, we own that, right? And so it was very difficult, and it is a difficult business to scale. I have to say that. That's why you have our company and you have our competitors who have raised so much money, but you know we're only present in a few markets, 9 markets, 10 markets, right? Cities in the
Yeah.
U.S. And there's a reason why. It's because it's very very complex to do that. So by design, I did not want to do the same thing. I did not want to replicate this. What we're
Sure.
focused more is on the software component. As a matter of fact, a Growrk, the way it's being built, it's sort of a managed a marketplace on the back end. What we're
Sure.
doing is that we're providing a dashboard, a platform where
It's a
uh,
platform. Yeah.
where companies will be able to do the onboarding and the management of their remote employee needs, physical employee needs and services. But really, the companies that are actually fulfilling those services locally are part of the marketplace, right? These are companies that we have onboarded, that we have vetted, that we know that are providing the products and the services that we need them to provide to our customers. And so our customers don't have to deal with each of these vendors individually. They just deal with us, with our platform. They select what they need, and everything's already wrapped up in a pretty affordable rate. So you don't even have to think about that, right? All the billing, all the admin, everything is centralized, and to ensure that you are providing those products, those services to your employees, right? And so we don't own any of the assets. We don't own any of the services. We're merely connecting, vetting, and managing those workflows and providing visibility throughout the value chain, so that everybody gets what what is needed, on a timely basis and at the level at the quality level that is required. And that's what we provide.
Got it. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit. So let's go back to kind of January. What were you observing, I guess, changes in the market as far as remote teams go? Like, were there any trends prior to COVID that kind of let you on to the fact that there's, a big, seismic shift kind of in work coming?
Oh, for sure. I mean, no, that's I think the greatest one is that, like I mentioned earlier, we're focused on technology companies because they were the early adopters, right? Come January, come February, when everybody is locked down and working remotely, every single company went remote out of an emergency, obviously, out of an emergency, and so a lot of these companies, non-traditional, companies that have been operating within a co-located office space forever,
Yeah.
found themselves working remotely, right? Without the systems, without the processes, without the culture of actually enabling remote work. So what we have seen in the last 3 months, 4 months, is that many of these companies have learned about the benefits of remote work. A lot of them like it. A lot of them love it, as a matter of fact. And many of them have decided, hey, you know what? This makes a lot of sense for us. I had a conversation with the CEO of an accounting firm in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, and they have 80 employees, and he was telling me, we've been working well. We actually going to ditch the office, and so this is how we're going to continue doing it from now on. And that is the same message that I'm hearing from multiple companies that we talk to. So, because the biggest shift is that now every single company has developed or is developing a long-term remote work strategy. And why? Because initially everybody thought it was this remote work from home is going to be a couple of month thing, and then we'll go back to the office and everything will be fine, right? We'll be continue working as normal. What ends up happening is that since there's still a lot of uncertainty, in the country, in the world, around when is that going to be safe, these companies are deciding, all right, for the rest of the year, we're going to be working from home, at least, right? And you know what? We're actually going to be providing the flexibility to work from home and work from the office moving forward too, forever, right? And so, we ourselves are inserting, our service within these conversations, engaging these companies at this stage where they're working on developing their remote work strategies, because we need to figure it out what's the best way for them to ensure that they're taking care of their employees, right? If they're going to switch fully remote or partially remote, that's still a consideration. And so, a lot of things, a lot of this is being driven by costs. As you have heard, maybe from CDC recommendations,
Right.
you have to actually make improvements, modifications to the office space, right? To
Itself, yeah.
bring back the workforce, right? And so when you look at all these things, all this list, all these considerations, you're looking at things that really not make it feasible. And really, why would you want to bring somebody back to the office when first, even if you make those changes, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be operating in a safe environment. And second, the cost of worker that you will have operating out of an office will increase significantly out of all of these changes that you need to make, right? So if you're paying in New York or in San Francisco $15,000 a year per employee, now you're going to have to pay, $25,000, right? Or,
it's crazy.
$22,500, right? If it's a 50% increase. So, from a cost, perspective, really just doesn't make sense anymore. And so if you can engage a service like Growrk to pay a fraction of that to ensure that you're providing the same amenities, the same services, the same, facilities to the remote, workspace, then it makes a lot of sense, right? The second thing too is that a lot of these companies that have been, or employees that have been operating remotely, even though it's been out of an emergency, and even though they've been, dealing with, you have the kids, home all the time because there's no school, and, there are all these problems that you need to figure it out. Even those people, they're still saying, hey, you know what? I really like this, and maybe this is not the best thing right now, but I can see how this, works out for me. And so I'm going to continue pursuing companies that provide with remote work flexibility, right? And so, I would say that's the biggest change. Before, we only had a niche of companies in the technology space primarily that were interested in remote work. Now every single company is looking at it. And so we're building for that. We're building for to be able to serve these other industries that are moving in that direction. The largest one, probably non-traditional, it's Nationwide, the insurance company. They're basically closing all of their offices and most of their offices, and they're sending everybody, to work from home permanently. So, that's an insurance company. Yeah, that should give you, an idea of the direction of where the future of work, is going to.
I mean, how do you think companies have performed in general? If we're talking about like traditional companies, like even, banks and that type of thing in this past 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, like, do we have any data on how productivity has been affected by people moving to working from home?
Yeah, there is definitely data around productivity. The first thing is that was the first concern that a lot of managers had. The productivity was going to be impacted. There was a recent survey, and I cannot recall the source, but I'm happy to share that afterward.
Sure.
That basically went in depth on that, and they determined that none of the issues that they have experienced working from home was related to productivity. As a matter of fact, the opposite happened. Productivity went up, and the reason why.
Interesting.
And the reason why, it's because obviously you're not commuting anymore, right? You're going straight to work. You start working early morning, and then you're done at the end of your day, right? What ends up happening when you're working from home, and this is, it's a good thing and a bad thing, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. You need to develop better ways to manage working from home, because what happens is that you end up working more hours when you work from home, because there are no cues as to, hey, this is when you have to stop, right? And so you just naturally get into whatever it is that you're doing, and it's already
you don't break the flow. Yeah.
Stop, right? And so that ended up happening, and that ends up happening a lot. So, a lot of people that are new to remote work have to balance that, working from home, and how do you separate work from life, right? Since everything is so, merged, right? And so, it's part of the learning process. Productivity definitely not affected. Part of the solution that we provide too is by providing the right equipment, you can continue enhancing that productivity for the remote employee, right? There are studies that back that up. If you have 2 screens as opposed to 1, if you have, an ergonomic, chair, if you have, all these tools, there's a direct correlation between productivity and the tools that you have and knowing how to use those tools. So that is on top of just working from home, which by itself, enhances productivity.
Do you think there are delayed effects as far as like employee wellness that we haven't seen yet?
100%, 100%. We've been receiving a lot of inbounds in the last few weeks where the heads of HR really reaching out and telling us, hey, we thought initially we were going to be doing for just a couple of months, but now I'm getting calls from employees that, hey, I have this problem in my back, I have this problem in my neck. And so we're trying to figure it out because, the $200 chair that they bought, now it's broken, it doesn't work, it's not, it doesn't really fit, the long-term needs of that employee. So, that's when they start looking at our solution and thinking, all right, this makes sense now, right? When we started looking at this, when we first talked to you guys, we didn't actually think we were gonna need this. But now, after 3-4 months that we've been working from home, we're seeing those problems. And so that's kind of what we have been trying to do. And it's kind of what I was alluding earlier on. There is an educational component here when you talk to customers, to potential customers, like, hey, there's all these issues that you can have by having your employees working from home and not actually supervising that they have the correct equipment and the right training to ensure that they're protected. And the reason why it's important is because if you don't take care of that, they're going to get injured. And, the cost of, worker compensation, can skyrocket, right? And that's just the direct cost. Imagine the indirect cost of, not working and, having to find somebody else to replace that person, you name it, right? So we're talking about billions of dollars of, risk on the line here that, you can mitigate by using a service like Growrk.
Kind of tough question here, but how do employees look at it? I mean, is it something where they see it as a benefit, or are bits of it? And listen, I could be completely wrong here. Are bits of it a little invasive for someone that's coming to start to work from home?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Chris?
The employee perception of the product service, is it okay, this is a benefit for me, or okay, my company is being a bit invasive. Now they're, trying to figure out what I'm doing in my home.
For sure. No, that's a great question. And as a matter of fact, there are companies, that's a big deal right now, big debate, because there are companies that are actually focused, specifically those companies that come from traditional, industries that have been focused on using software like, Time Doctor, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this.
All of that, yeah, we use it.
What they do is they track, the activity of a remote work, right? Like,
everything you do.
The concern of the manager is my employee actually working when they're home? And that's really the wrong idea about remote work. Remote work is built on the idea of productivity, on meeting objectives, right? Not on how many hours you spend sitting down, moving your mouse.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? That's the biggest shift in mentality and culture when you work, when you transition to remote work versus a co-located, office culture environment.
Why?
Yeah, with our solution, going back to answer your question, our solution really, we're not invading, we're not providing that supervision per se. We're actually enabling companies to extend their presence into the remote employees, workspace, but not in a supervision type of way, but rather, hey, we want you to be safe, we want you to be healthy, we want you to be comfortable. Here are all the amenities, all the products, all the equipment that you would normally find in our office if you were coming to work to an office space, but delivered directly to your workspace, right? And we're just providing that solution to you. And as a matter of fact, we will give you the flexibility to select equipment that you need from this catalog that we have already pre-approved as a company for you to use from us, right? You don't have to worry about, spending it. You don't need to worry about anything. All you need to do is just go on our, dashboard, select the equipment from the catalog that we have provided, and we'll take care of everything else.
Are people thinking about these types of issues on their own? Like, do you think that they're probably thinking about Is there any case where, people would have already bought this type of equipment?
Yeah, so that's it. That's the beauty of this. Our platform really, it's a remote office management platform, right? So what that means is that you can either select the equipment that you don't have already, or you can actually, if you already have equipment set up in your place, this is supplying, provisioning, office equipment is an ongoing thing. It's not like, hey, you just bought something and you're set. No, that thing may need service. It may get damaged. You know what? You may need to replace a keyboard. So whatever it is that you think in terms of facilities management, that's what we do, right? So we provide that remote facilities management solution so that if an employee that already has everything, they don't actually need anything from us, it's fine too. But since they are onboarded on the platform,
you want them on the platform. Yeah.
Whenever they have a need, they just submit it there. They submit the ticket there, and we'll take care of everything, right? Obviously, the ergonomics training and ergonomic supervision, that's part of the service. So even if that employee already has everything set up home, since they're part of the solution already of our platform, we will service them with ergonomics training, supervision, and any servicing needs on an ongoing basis.
Got it. Kind of general question, taking a step back a little bit. You've managed teams in person, you've managed teams remote. Growrk has a largely remote team. Do you see, what are the advantages? Like, can you give me kind of, in your perspective, based on your experience, pros, cons of having a team remote versus in person? And I'm talking more about kind of the collaboration aspects to it, as opposed to like, oh, we can hire people far away who are cheaper, or, better access to talent. Yeah, like in terms of the actual, productivity aspect of it.
For sure. Look, this is a great question. With Casa, we build a remote team. Most of the engineers were based out of Bangalore in India. And in the US, we only had operations and stuff, right? So that was kind of the first approach, and I saw that as an experience that, hey, this actually works, right? With Growrk, we built our team the same way. It's fully distributed. Our employees are currently in Mexico, Colombia, Spain, and the UK. I am the only one in the US, as a matter of fact. And so, nice. In terms of productivity, really, there's there's really no problem. You get an all hands meeting. A staff meeting on Monday, you discuss what you're going to be working on that week, and on Friday we have another call just to check in and make sure that everything is on track. And that's really how we operate. If we need anything during the week, obviously we communicate on Slack, or we can set up a quick Zoom call. But there's really no we're not sacrificing anything by working remotely. As a matter of fact, we're enhancing the experience for a lot of our employees who have families, and they want to actually have the flexibility to be with their families. I don't know, in the morning or whenever that is with the kids, and then get back to work later in the day. It doesn't matter for us, right? You have that flexibility since it's asynchronous. You don't have to be checking in. You don't need to be providing any updates. What we care about is that, hey, this is what we need to accomplish. This is the product. This is what we need to develop. During this period. These are the targets. Let's make sure that we're getting there, right? And if you have any problems getting there, let us know, and then we can figure out something so that there's that communication. I would say this thing: when you're operating remotely, the most important thing, and it's really communication. If you assume things, the most likely thing that will happen is that exactly it's going to be wrong. So never assume anything. Everything has to be communicated clearly. There has to be a centralized, platform where everybody has visibility to everything. In our case, we use Monday. So on Monday, we have all these workflows. We have all these processes for every team member. And so if I want to know who's working on what, or I want to get a status of what's happening, I just go on Monday, click on whatever, on that process, and then figure it out who's working on that. And I just contact them, hey, how's this going? Or, it's very easy to manage this. So personally, this is a thing of beauty,
Yeah. I
it
think one,
requires. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, do you see, so, some would argue that there's value in terms of the professional relationship of being with someone one-on-one in person that can't be replicated virtually. Not in terms
Oh,
of the communication aspect, but even in terms of the, recruiting side or
for
training
sure.
side.
For sure. I think that, the way we're handling this today, we're being very thoughtful about building company culture since we're still a young company, right? We're 9 employees so far. And so, we do schedule one-on-ones randomly just to,
Do all that. Yeah.
yeah, just hey, hey, you should connect with this guy that we just brought on board last week. Just have a coffee chat, 30 minutes, just introduce yourself, that sort of thing, right? What we're thinking, one of the things, normalize is that at some point we will organize, an event somewhere, I don't know, Mexico City or somewhere central for a lot of people.
That's what we see. Yeah.
Exactly. And just, hang out and work, for a week, just kind of to develop that part, that component, right? But I really don't see it. I really don't see it as a problem, to be honest. There's a lot of people that, they're saying, hey, I miss the, interaction, personal interaction. Well, that's fine. Maybe for some people that is very difficult. There's another thing too. This is more of a generational thing, right? The older you are, the more friction there is, and the more pushback there is to remote, because you're like, no, I'm used to working with people and all this.
It's hard to change your habits.
The younger you are, the more flexibility you want. So
right.
it's also being defined by that, right?
Right. Or even I think the other objection to it would be kind of something that I've noticed, which is that a lot of times it's much more effective. Like, we used to have a process that was heavily reliant on Slack, and you're just slacking all the time to people, right? But it seems like a combination of like Zoom and like some type of project process management software tends to work better than something that's predominantly based on like Slack communications.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing too is that, you kind of get into the rhythm of what works best for certain people, right? There are some folks that, they do their best work at night. We have this developer in Mexico that
that's true.
Is a genius, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't start working until like 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
Yeah. So yeah.
Sending messages at 3 a.m, and then we find him, next morning, right? But hey, I mean, you accommodate to whatever it is that works best for people, and that makes it productive, and that works very well.
Yeah, we have a few night owls, and that's I've definitely noticed that as well. But you want them to work in where how it's natural to them. That's going to be the most productive.
You're enabling that by providing that flexibility. Like, hey, this is a time where you do your best work. That's fine. You do what you got to do. Just get to where we need to get based on what we determine, and that's it. That's all that matters when working remotely. At the end of the day, it's all about results. In real life, in working in an office or working in remotely is the same thing. As I would argue that working in an office actually worse, because you get a lot of folks that they may be slackers, they may not be the best, right? But because they are good at talking and politics, and
they can cover it up.
They ingratiate themselves, to the manager, and it's not a good situation. And can you imagine the cost of that for
a big company? Yeah.
Company. That's something that just doesn't happen working remotely, because you have full visibility, right?
You can see it. Yeah.
So it's part of that culture, and that's why we believe strongly that remote is really the future of this. It really helps and enables you to focus on what you do best under your own terms, in terms of you can actually work it around your life, the lifestyle that you want to develop and create for yourself, while being effective as an employee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in general that I think there is a big generational gap in terms of how people think about it. It's also, you kind of have to be familiar and competent with the technologies that you use, whether it's Zoom, Slack, whatever else. And if you don't, I feel like if you don't have the technologies in place outside of the work environment, it's very hard to implement. You know, your company needs to not only have the culture side, but also the actual IT side
Absolutely.
in check.
And as a matter of fact, that is what really has enabled remote work. The tools that we have to
That you can do it, yeah.
That we did not have a few years ago. Now you get into an argument too of you know, you have the tools, and you know, you're working at a company like Microsoft, you're working at a company like Google, where you're, you know, by default already working remotely, right? Because you're in an office building and you're communicating to other people, you know, members that are in other floors, other, you know, office buildings. And so it's like, what's the difference between being, you know, in an office as to, you know, if you were somewhere else? You know, that's actually interesting. Now that I mentioned those two companies, Microsoft and Google, in the case of those guys that have invested billions of dollars in real estate, you know, it's a little bit more difficult to make that transition.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, but aren't all that they're offering the option to work remote, but I guess they lower your salary or something if you move to like some.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You know, like you know, think about this: if you're living in San Francisco Bay Area and the cost of living is so high, and you're getting, you know, this apartment. I was living there. I lived there for the last, you know, 3 years, and I was paying $3,500 for, you know, a one bedroom. You know, one bedroom ish, right? So, you know, to me, I was like, okay, fine, yeah. On paper, you're making 150 to 100K, but really, how much is that? How much you're really getting to?
How much is cut out of it? Yeah.
So, if now that I moved down here to Southern California, you know, I have a bigger house. You know, it's
a big difference.
Yeah, I make and so. You know, it's that trade-off really that is not really a trade-off when you think about it. You're avoiding all the problems. In my case, you know, San Francisco, I have a love-hate relationship with the city. Beautiful city, but it has a lot of problems nowadays. And so, you know, homelessness.
It's a bit, there's a lot of issues.
So you know, my quality of life has increased significantly since I moved out of San Francisco. My expenses are a lot more manageable. I have actually, you know, a bigger space and you know, live more comfortable now that I'm not there. And everything is enabled by remote work. So that's why you're seeing all this outflux of you know, people leaving the Bay Area for those same reasons, right? They're trying to figure it out. Hey, now my company is providing me with remote work flexibility. You know what? I'm going to break my lease. I'm going to get out of here. Like, go to Los Angeles, Austin, whatever. I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like it's pretty much a no-brainer when you think about it. But a lot of people, I mean, my brother, you know, lives in San Francisco, works for a startup, is like paying crazy money out for that one bedroom. So, you know, I totally get it. But I feel like, you know, it's kind of also a mindset, I think, that you have to change.
Absolutely. And it will take time, but it will get there. But look, I mean, the benefits really outweigh significantly any cons, right? I mean, they're well known and well documented. Yeah, loneliness. Yes, you know, some people do miss that social component. But hey, you know, if you actually build it into your lifestyle and you are very systematic about, hey, you know, at this time I'm going to go to work out. At this time I'm going to meet up with my friends. You know, you can actually work around this, right? And so these are things that are solvable. And when you think about, you know, productivity and having a better work-life balance, you know, lower costs, you know, all the elements are there for you to incentivize you to continue working remotely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's a personal preference more than a productivity thing. Like, so for example, you know, I've always, you know, throughout this whole thing, I've basically come into the office just because, you know, number one, don't want to be stuck with the spouse in the apartment. That's, you know, kind of issue number one. But number two, it's kind of just, you know, it's a routine. It's like a social type habit that you kind of have to get out of. But I think for most of the team, especially when you consider, you know, our main office in New York, you know, you're forcing your employees to move there. They have to deal with that. I mean, it just makes so much more sense
Absolutely.
to split it up and, you know.
Absolutely. New York is a special case. It's the same thing as San Francisco. You guys live in, used to live there for 7 years. So,
Yeah,
in a very small place and with roommates, imagine that. And everybody working from home, it's not, it's kind of a
not ideal. Yeah.
situation, right? But, by you working remotely, hey, maybe you want to move out to, somewhere else where you can actually have a more affordable, house. You can actually have a dedicated room for an office. It's all this stuff that
spread it out.
As you get older, especially as you start getting, into, hey, we have a family, we want to have, dedicate a little bit more time to the kids, that sort of thing. It's really a very high, incentive for employees that are more matured and more, looking for optimizing, their work life.
I think everybody really, and I mean, I've always had remote people, just, in terms of outsourcing, but also, domestically. And I definitely get the sense, it's preferred for most people, but I guess now it's going to become the norm, less so of a benefit.
Sure.
But that's an interesting thing. So kind of to wrap things up here, I do want to ask you kind of one buzzy question. You're familiar with ergonomics, productivity. What are 5 tips that you can give our kind of viewers, listeners, audience to prevent physical problems working at home?
For sure. No, that's a great question. So the first thing is that do make sure that you get the right equipment for you, right? Again, a lot of the things is when you working from home, especially under recent circumstances, you probably were working out of your sofa, the dining table, whatever that is.
Not
right?
good. Yeah.
Not good. I mean, it works for
you don't want to do couch
days, but that's fine, right?
Yeah.
If you're thinking about longer term working from home, get a high quality ergonomic chair. Don't really, you should be spending on it, right? If you get one of those $200, $300, $400 chairs, it's really not going to be the best thing. You're getting what you're paying for, really, right? Most chairs will be above $1,000 that are worth it, right? So that's the first thing. I think that's very important. The second thing I would say is make sure that at least you understand the basics of ergonomics. What does it take for you to ensure that you are incorporating best practices for how to set up a monitor, how to set up the height of a chair, the desk that work for you. Why is it important that you keep your posture, and you keep your screen at eye level, and all these considerations that normally you take for granted, but that longer term they have real implications. They can cost you a lot, not only from health bills and all that stuff, but rather from lifestyle, right? Like, hey, why do you want to have?
Gonna hurt you.
Exactly. So those are those things are important. You need to educate yourself, and don't really the first thing that we say to people that we talk to is employees take all of this for granted whenever they're working out of an office. And again, they really don't know how many hours and how much money and time has been spent on ensuring that their workspace, that bubble where they work from in an office, is protected, right? All that is completely lost, thrown out of the window when you're working from home. So ensure at least that you understand the basics, the principles, equipment, how to use it, and and get exactly what you need. I would say that. The third thing is set a structure that works for you, right? Make sure that you are actually separating work from life. That is more difficult when you don't have that a structure of, I'm going to step out of my place and go to the office, and then I'm going to go back to my place and kind of try to separate that. You don't have this here, right? So you do need to time yourself. You do need to set yourself, hey, I'm going to be working until 6, and then I'm going to schedule an event, go to a class, or whatever it is.
Break it up.
It forces me to get up and stand up and get out of my place to really cut that work, right? Work time. So create that, do what works best for you. I think the fourth thing that's important is that you communicate very well with your managers. You communicate with their team members on your needs. Obviously beyond work, you need to make sure that everybody understands what's working, what's not working. A lot of things are taken for, really are unspoken. And so when you're working remotely, it's more important than ever that you are transparent about what are you going through. Hey, if you need some time, because especially in the last few weeks that we've gone through some difficult times, through the protests and, everything has happened. It's something very important that you need to be able to communicate to your teams and to your team. And hey, you know what? I feel indisposed, to be honest. This week, there's a lot of distractions, things that I have to take care of. I just want to, put it out there. Let's figure out a plan so that we can dedicate, time to ourselves, right? So that we don't burn out, right? And so that becomes more important when you're working remotely. The last thing is embrace it. Embrace remote work, right? A lot of people fear it. A lot of people fear change. It's normal. Within that process of transitioning to remote, there's a lot of learnings that you need to do for yourself, a lot of processes that need to be created so that, workflows are streamlined, so that, you get the best structure works best for your team, for your company, and for yourself. But the benefits of working remotely can be very strong, very high. Once you get into a rhythm and you get comfortable operating in that environment. So, for us, it has worked well. We are encouraging, and we're very focused on developing that culture within our team. And I don't see ourselves getting an office anytime or ever for that reason, right? So yeah, I would say those are the main points.
Cool. Closing notes. Where can people find you? Obviously, go to Growrk.com. We'll put the kind of links in here to set up a call. What steps should people take if they want to get involved?
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Give us a call. Send us an email. We'll be happy to jump on a call and show you a demo, walk you through what we can do for your team. How we can help you better take care of your team members, especially if you're considering a longer term remote work strategy. We think that we can provide a solution that works very well for you guys. Just go on our site, check us out. Again, send us an email and we'll schedule some time to connect and provide you with a demo.
Cool. Carlos, thank you. It's No CMO Podcast. Links will be in the description.